She told me it was innocent, just a moment, nothing more. But innocence doesn't need hiding, does it? It started on one of those gray afternoons that make the city feel smaller, when the sky looks heavy and the streets carry that quiet hum right before the rain. I had stopped by a corner cafe, the kind with steamed-up windows and old jazz playing softly from a speaker that probably hadn't worked right in years. I wasn't supposed to notice her. She was just there, sitting by the window, her head bent over a notebook, pen gliding in slow, thoughtful motions. But something about the stillness around her caught me. While everyone else was moving fast, typing, scrolling, hurrying, she was calm. Like the world outside wasn't rushing past her at all. When she looked up, our eyes met for barely a second. Long enough for me to realize she was older, not by a little, but in a way that showed. Not in wrinkles or years, but in presence. The kind that comes from having lived through things and learned to carry them gracefully. Her black hair was tied loosely, a few strands escaping to brush against her cheek as she wrote. She had that kind of quiet beauty that doesn't announce itself, it just exists, and you notice it only when you slow down enough to see. The barista called her name, and she stood, slipping her pen into the spine of the notebook. She moved with an easy confidence, not rushed, not cautious, just sure. She reached for her cup, realized she'd forgotten her wallet on the table, and turned back. I got there first. Here, I said, handing it to her. She smiled, soft but warm. Thank you? I seem to be forgetting everything today. Her voice was low, calm, the kind that lingers a little longer in your head than it should. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. Happens to the best of us. She nodded, still smiling. And for a moment neither of us said anything. Just the sound of rain starting to fall, the faint scent of coffee and cinnamon, and the space between us that suddenly felt too charged for two strangers. When she finally turned to leave, she gave a polite goodbye, but her eyes stayed on mine for a beat longer than politeness required. I told myself I imagined it. That I was reading too much into a look, a moment, a smile. But when I sat back down, the seat across from me felt different. As if someone had left a trace of warmth there, something that lingered quietly in the air. That's the thing about certain people. They don't crash into your life. They arrive softly, like the first drops of rain on a quiet street, and before you realize it, they're all you can hear. I didn't know her name yet. I didn't know why she felt familiar. But something in me already knew I'd see her again. And when I did, the quiet between us would never feel the same. It's strange how easily a stranger becomes a part of your days, not through words or plans, but by quiet repetition. I didn't plan to see her again. But the city, or maybe fate, had other ideas. It began with mornings. The same cafe, around the same hour, the same sound of the espresso machine hissing in protest as the barista worked too fast. I'd walk in half awake, scrolling through messages, and there she'd be, always by the window, that same notebook open beside her cup. Sometimes she'd notice me first. Sometimes I'd pretend not to notice her noticing me. But it didn't matter who looked first, what mattered was that, eventually, we always did. We started exchanging small things at first, a smile, a polite nod, a shared glance toward the window when the rain returned. Then one morning, she spoke first. Late again? She teased gently, glancing at the clock on the wall. I laughed. You keep track of that? Only when it's consistent, she said, taking a sip of her coffee. There was a faint curve to her lips, part amusement, part curiosity. It became our rhythm, a few words over coffee, a shared joke, a quiet moment before the day swallowed us both again. Over time, those small moments began to stretch. She'd linger a bit longer after finishing her drink. I'd time my order so I could stand beside her at the counter. It wasn't deliberate, or maybe it was. I never really decided. I learned her name one morning when the barista called it again, Elena. I said it once, silently, testing how it sounded. It fit her, elegant, unhurried, quietly strong. She learned my name later that week when I forgot my wallet, and she covered my coffee without hesitation. Consider it karma, she said, smiling. You helped me first. The next day, I left her coffee on the counter before she arrived, the same order, perfectly timed. Her amused look when she realized it had been me made the entire morning brighter than it had any right to be. One day, as we stood side by side in line, she reached up to adjust the knot in my tie, a gesture so natural it almost didn't register at first. But then her fingers brushed against my collarbone, and suddenly every sound in the cafe faded. "There," she said softly, looking up at me. "Now you look awake." Her touch was brief, but it stayed, a quiet imprint that followed me through the day. I told myself it was nothing, that she was just kind, composed, the way someone older might be to someone still figuring things out. But the truth is, I waited for those mornings. For her calm, her laughter, her gentle teasing that somehow steadied me. Some people make life louder. She didn't. She made it clearer. And I was beginning to realize, I didn't just enjoy our mornings. I needed them. It happened one evening when the city felt softer than usual, that hour between dusk and night, when the sky turns violet and the streetlights hum before they fully wake. Elena had texted me for the first time that day. Nothing dramatic, just, "You mentioned that rooftop cafe once. Still open?" I told her it was. She said she'd join me, just for a quick coffee. But the night had other plans. When she arrived, the breeze had picked up, gentle, cool, brushing strands of her hair across her face. She wore a light scarf and the same quiet confidence that always made her stand out. I waved her over, pretending to be casual even though my heartbeat didn't get the memo. "Still working?" she asked, eyeing the laptop on the table. "Trying to," I said, closing it halfway. "But you're a better distraction." She smiled, small, genuine. "That's not necessarily a good thing." "It is tonight," I said before I could stop myself. There was a pause. Not awkward, just full. The kind of pause where words feel unnecessary because something else is speaking between them. She looked out over the city lights. "It's strange," she said quietly, "how small things can feel safe. Like coffee with someone you don't owe anything to." I watched her, not wanting to interrupt. There was something in her tone, a softness hiding weight. She continued, "I used to come up here with someone. Years ago. We'd sit in that corner." She gestured toward a table near the railing. "He liked the view." "Your husband?" I asked gently. She nodded once. "Ex-husband, technically. He left. Or maybe I did. Depends on who you ask." Her voice didn't shake, but it had that careful stillness that comes from holding something too long. I didn't say anything, just listened. She smiled faintly, eyes on the lights below. "You're easy to talk to, you know. I don't usually open up like this." "Maybe you were just waiting for someone to actually listen," I said. She looked at me then, really looked, the kind of gaze that feels like it reaches through layers. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because they make people feel things they shouldn't." The wind moved between us. She shivered lightly, so I slipped off my jacket and placed it around her shoulders. Her fingers brushed mine, warm, delicate, hesitant. "Thank you," she murmured. "You don't have to thank me," I said. "It's just something people do." She smiled again, but it was sad this time. "You're kind. That's dangerous." We sat there for another hour, mostly in silence, two people surrounded by a city that never stopped moving, both pretending we didn't feel what was quietly forming between us. When she finally stood to leave, she said softly, "This was nice. Don't read too much into it." I smiled. Too late. It happened one evening when the city felt softer than usual, that hour between dusk and night, when the sky turns violet and the streetlights hum before they fully wake. Elena had texted me for the first time that day. Nothing dramatic, just, "You mentioned that rooftop cafe once. Still open?" I told her it was. She said she'd join me, just for a quick coffee. But the night had other plans. When she arrived, the breeze had picked up, gentle, cool, brushing strands of her hair across her face. She wore a light scarf and the same quiet confidence that always made her stand out. I waved her over, pretending to be casual even though my heartbeat didn't get the memo. "Still working?" she asked, eyeing the laptop on the table. "Trying to," I said, closing it halfway. "But you're a better distraction." She smiled, small, genuine. "That's not necessarily a good thing." "It is tonight," I said before I could stop myself. There was a pause. Not awkward, just full. The kind of pause where words feel unnecessary because something else is speaking between them. She looked out over the city lights. "It's strange," she said quietly, "how small things can feel safe. Like coffee with someone you don't owe anything to." I watched her, not wanting to interrupt. There was something in her tone, a softness hiding weight. She continued, "I used to come up here with someone. Years ago. We'd sit in that corner." She gestured toward a table near the railing. "He liked the view." "Your husband?" I asked gently. She nodded once. "Ex-husband, technically. He left. Or maybe I did. Depends on who you ask." Her voice didn't shake, but it had that careful stillness that comes from holding something too long. I didn't say anything, just listened. She smiled faintly, eyes on the lights below. "You're easy to talk to, you know. I don't usually open up like this." "Maybe you were just waiting for someone to actually listen," I said. She looked at me then, really looked, the kind of gaze that feels like it reaches through layers. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because they make people feel things they shouldn't." The wind moved between us. She shivered lightly, so I slipped off my jacket and placed it around her shoulders. Her fingers brushed mine, warm, delicate, hesitant. "Thank you," she murmured. "You don't have to thank me," I said. "It's just something people do." She smiled again, but it was sad this time. "You're kind. That's dangerous." We sat there for another hour, mostly in silence. Two people surrounded by a city that never stopped moving, both pretending we didn't feel what was quietly forming between us. When she finally stood to leave, she said softly, "This was nice. Don't read too much into it." I smiled. Too late. It was a Thursday evening when I saw her, though, in truth, I wasn't supposed to. I'd left work later than usual, exhausted and restless, the kind of tired that coffee couldn't fix. The rain had started again, light but persistent, painting the streets in reflections of amber and white. I decided to take the long way home, past the same cafe where it had all started. That's when I saw her. Through the fogged glass, Elena sat at a corner table, the same one by the window she always chose. But she wasn't alone. A man sat across from her, older, confident, the kind of man who looked like he belonged in her world. He leaned forward as he spoke, and she laughed, quietly, freely. A kind of laughter I hadn't heard from her in weeks. I stopped on the sidewalk, half hidden beneath my umbrella, watching through the soft blur of rain. I told myself to move, to keep walking, but my feet wouldn't listen. It wasn't jealousy at first. It was confusion. She told me she didn't have anyone. That she wasn't ready. That what we had, whatever it was, couldn't be anything more. But there she was, meeting someone in the very place where we met. The same table. The same soft smile. And it wasn't the scene itself that hurt, it was the hiding. The fact that she hadn't mentioned him at all. When she looked up and saw me through the window, the change in her expression was instant. The laughter faded, replaced by something sharp and unreadable. Guilt, maybe? Surprise. Fear. I turned away before she could wave or come outside. The rain came harder as I walked. I could taste metal in my mouth, that strange tang that shows up when your chest tightens too much. My phone buzzed once. "It's not what it looks like." I didn't answer. By the time I got home, my jacket was soaked, my thoughts worse. I tried to reason with myself, to remember that she didn't owe me anything. That we'd never said words like together or us. That maybe she was right all along, that it was innocent. But innocence doesn't need secrets. The next morning, she wasn't at the cafe. For the first time in months, the window seat was empty. I ordered my coffee anyway, sitting where she used to sit, pretending not to notice the way her absence echoed louder than the music. I stared at the raindrops tracing lines down the glass, each one breaking apart halfway down. That's how we felt to me, two people who started as something simple and beautiful, only to blur before they ever reached the end. That night, I didn't just miss her. I resented how much I did. It took me 2 days to summon the courage. 2 days of walking past the cafe without sitting, of staring at my phone and imagining what I might say, rehearsing every word, every pause. When I finally called her, she hesitated before answering, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. We met at her apartment, the place she rarely invited anyone into. The moment I stepped inside, the familiar scent of faint vanilla and old books wrapped around me, a comfort I hadn't realized I'd been craving. The soft hum of the city outside filtered through the blinds, which were half closed, casting long lines of shadow across the room. She was standing by the window, back straight, arms crossed, the posture of someone trying to stay composed while their chest quietly raced. When she saw me, her eyes softened, but the tension didn't leave them. "I saw you," I said immediately, before she could speak. My voice was low, steady, though my hands shook slightly. She froze, then nodded. "I suppose I should have told you." "Should have?" I echoed, swallowing the tightness in my throat. "Elena, it wasn't about what you were doing. It was about hiding it. If it really was innocent, why hide it from me?" Her eyes dropped, and for a moment, the room felt smaller. I wanted to reach for her, to take her hand and erase the ache in my chest. Instead, I waited. "I didn't want you to misunderstand," she whispered. "I care about you more than I should. But I can't offer anything right now." I thought if I kept it private, it wouldn't hurt either of us. I took a careful step closer, feeling the air thicken between us. It did hurt, I admitted. It hurt because I thought we had something real, even if either of us named it yet. And I felt left out, excluded from something that mattered to you. Her hands unclasped, fingers tracing the edge of the windowsill. "You mean more to me than anyone in my life has in a long time," she said softly, almost afraid to speak the words. "But I've been hurt before. I didn't want to hurt you too." I swallowed, wanting to tell her that I understood, that I would accept whatever she could give me, but instead, I simply nodded. I let the silence speak for the words I didn't have. Then, almost imperceptibly, she took a step toward me. Her hand brushed mine, a delicate, electric touch that said everything she couldn't put into words. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she murmured, voice trembling. "I can't help it," I said. "Not anymore." We stood there, close but not touching fully, sharing a quiet space that had finally become ours. No confessions of love, no grand promises, just the unspoken acknowledgement that we had crossed some invisible line, that our connection was real, and that it hurt when it wasn't shared fully. For the first time in days, I felt something lift, not resolution, not peace, but clarity. We both knew what we felt, even if the world around us didn't. And that was enough, for now. Weeks passed after our confrontation, though it didn't feel like time at all. I avoided the cafe at first, unsure if seeing her again would be a relief or a wound. Each day was the same, an ache I couldn't name, a quiet longing I pretended wasn't there. Then, one crisp autumn afternoon, it happened. I was walking through the park near the cafe, leaves swirling in soft eddies around my feet. The sunlight caught the amber and gold of the trees, painting the city in warmth. And there she was. Elena, standing near a bench, her scarf catching the breeze, looking as if the world had paused for her alone. For a moment neither of us moved. It was just her, me, and the gentle hum of the city around us. I wasn't angry anymore. Not quite. My heart still thudded, but it was steady, patient, as if it knew this moment had been waiting all along. She smiled, small but genuine, and stepped closer. "I wasn't sure I'd see you again," she said softly. "I wasn't sure I wanted to see you again." I admitted, letting a half-smile slip. Not until I was ready to be honest with myself. We walked together slowly, without speaking much. The silence wasn't heavy this time, it was comforting. Familiar. Two people who had hurt each other, who had hesitated and faltered, now moving alongside one another in quiet understanding. We stopped near a park bench, and she leaned back slightly, letting the sunlight warm her face. I could see the subtle lines around her eyes deepen when she smiled, the gentle way her hands rested in her lap. There was no rush, no expectation, only the soft, steady presence that had drawn me in from the beginning. Her hand brushed mine, almost casually, but my chest tightened. She didn't pull away. Instead, she held my gaze, and I understood everything she couldn't say aloud. That she trusted me, that she wanted this, whatever this was, to exist without words complicating it. "I'm glad we found our way back," she whispered. "Me too," I said. We sat together then, shoulders almost touching, letting the quiet stretch comfortably between us. No promises were made. No confessions shouted into the wind. Just the soft acknowledgement that what we had was ours alone, fragile and beautiful, and that sometimes the best connections are the ones that exist in these quiet, unspoken spaces. I realized then that our story didn't need a grand gesture or a dramatic finale. It existed in the lingering glances, the brush of a hand, the shared warmth of a moment when the world felt distant and irrelevant. When it was time to leave, she gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "See you soon?" she asked. I nodded. Soon. And as I walked away, the sunlight glinting off the wet leaves, I carried that quiet certainty with me, that some connections don't need to be loud to be real. That love, in its most patient, tender form, sometimes waits for us to be ready. And in that waiting, it grows stronger, deeper, and more unforgettable than anything we could force or rush.